it's time for chapter 24 in the miraculous journey of Edward Tulane. This is the opening picture for the chapter. So I just wanted to make sure you got a close look at that. Let's go ahead and dive in and see what happens next to Edward. So remember, he was at the doll menders, and the doll mender was going to bring him back to his glory and make him, give him like the finest suit and restore him. So let's see. And so Edward Tulane was mended, which means fixed. He was put together again, cleaned and polished, dressed in an elegant suit, and placed on a high shelf for display. From this shelf, Edward could see the whole shop, Lucius Clark's workbench, and the windows to the outside world, and the door that the customers used to enter and leave. From this shelf, Edward saw Bryce open the door one day and stand in the threshold, the silver harmonica in his left hand flashing brilliantly in the sunlight flooding through the windows. "Young sir," said Lucius, "I am afraid that we made a deal." "Can't I see him?" asked Bryce. He wiped his hand across his nose, and the gesture filled Edward with a terrible feeling of love and loss. "I just want to look at him." Lucius Clark sighed. "You may look," he said. "You may look, and then you must go and not come back. I cannot have you in my shop every day, mooning over what you have lost." "Yes, sir," said Bryce. Lucius sighed again. He got up from his workbench and went to Edward's shelf and picked him up and held him so that Bryce could see him. "Hey, Jangles," said Bryce, "you look good. The last time I seen you, you looked terrible. Your head was busted in and—" "He is put together again," said Lucius, "as I promised you he would be." Bryce nodded. He wiped his hand across his nose. So here is Bryce looking at Edward, or Jangles that he called him, and the doll mender, Lucius, is showing him to him. But he's telling Bryce, "I'll show him to you, but you cannot come in here again." So I'm guessing that a little part of Bryce's heart is probably breaking, and a little part of Edward's too. "Can I hold him?" he asked. "No," said Lucius. Bryce nodded again. "Tell him goodbye," said Lucius Clark. "He is repaired. He has been saved. Now you must tell him goodbye." "Goodbye," said Bryce. "Don't go," thought Edward. "I won't be able to bear it if you go." "And now you must leave," said Lucius Clark. "Yes, sir," said Bryce, but he stood without moving, looking at Edward. "Go," said Lucius Clark. "Go." "Please," thought Edward, "don't." Bryce turned. He walked through the door of the doll mender's shop. The door closed, the bell tinkled, and Edward was alone. So I'm sure that, you know how we talk a lot about in stories about how we can infer what characters are feeling using our own experiences, or thinking about how we would feel if we were in that character's same position. So I want you to think for a minute about Edward. He's suffered a lot of loss now. And Bryce, who he loves, is now leaving. So now he's losing someone else. So think about how Edward would be feeling at this point in the story. I'm sure you guys have some really good ideas of how he feels. And you could even give me proof of how he feels by using some text evidence, something from the story that happened. You guys are really good at that. So Bryce has now left the shop, and Edward is, he's still there at the doll mender's little shop that he has. Okay, be back soon for the next chapter.